How do I drive operational excellence in LatAm-based teams? All right, well, besides showering them with empanadas, which always goes well. So first and foremost, it's important to know that a lot of people like to group all of LatAm together, but each country has its own unique nuances. And I'll frame my response around Colombia-based teammates. One, starting point is around the term ahorita, and this basically means soonish. And we've made it a goal at NeoWork that we don't use this word. And, whenever there's a task, giving a fixed timeline and even date and time of entry, just to remove any ambiguity there. Another best practice I found is matching the level of directness with communication. So if you are sending a Slack message to a Colombian-based teammate, for example, and you start out first with, hey, how's this project going? Really just putting that extra 10 seconds of the buenos dias, ¿cómo estás? Or like, hey, good morning, how are you? Before diving into it, that goes a long way. And I promise that those 10 seconds spent on that will help save 10 minutes down the road from just misunderstandings that can happen at times when there's a very direct tone, which Colombian-based teammates may be less familiar with. Hey everyone, it's Joshua back with some empanadas. So I've gotten some awesome questions from listeners recently and wanted to dive in. All right, first question. So many founders, including myself, have immigrant parents who sacrificed everything for the American dream. How has this shaped your approach to risk-taking and resilience in your entrepreneurial journey? Well, my father, he grew up in the former Soviet Union, Ukraine, and emigrated to the US. And he came to the country with no papers and $150. And I definitely credit my resilience in the face of rejection, just based off of seeing him growing up and hearing so many no's when he was trying to pitch his different business ideas with the thick Soviet accent, and just that working from a sense of really survival of I gotta find a way to make that work. So in my own journey, like even from a standpoint of going through sales calls and dealing with no's and rejection, I definitely always kind of hear back to the just like listening to him on calls and pitching and his resilience of just looking past those no's, and that always inspires me to look forward. And also certainly I would say being less risk averse. I've been able to see him find ways to make things happen. For example, in the early days of NeoWork, we would take on new clients in new industries for us, and we would just lock in, learn the industry quickly, and make it work. So really credit that kind of resilience and just entrepreneurial energy from him. All right, what are some tips you can share with driving performance with overseas teams in cultures that are non-confrontational? Yeah, this is a good one and one that I've seen founders struggle with a lot. I'll frame my response in the using Philippines-based teams as an example, due to the fact that I've got 170 team members in the Philippines currently. And I think a good starting point for this question is just better understanding how many Filipinos have grown up in education systems that are very hierarchical, and even moving into their first roles in their careers if they worked at larger BPOs or Philippines-based companies. There's a very strong sense of um, being careful with always maintaining group harmony and not being confrontational. So let me dive through a couple just terms in Tagalog, and I think it will also help inform how to better drive and reward um, certain, being forward and certain attitudes that would go against what they may have seen in their prior workplaces. So first word is the concept pabibo, and it has a negative connotation, this word in the Philippines. And it basically means drawing attention to themselves, raising their hand. Hey, why are we doing this way? I think we could be more efficient if we made this adjustment. And Look, it first starts from the recruitment layer of being able to screen for teammates that have this forward uh, facing feature. But also, once they're on the job, really incentivizing showing that. So, one of our company values at NeoWork is communicate proactively. And, we really have a lot of incentives tied to like MVP awards and performance reviews, tied to how well they're able to do this. So, really encouraging and being a broken record, kind of constantly repeating communicating correctly and drawing attention to yourself is a core part of and really a requirement of the role. And framing it that it's not something to be ashamed of or look low upon. This is something that we really celebrate at your company. All right. Another term to in Tagalog is pakikisama. So this essentially means group harmony. And for smaller teams, I would highly encourage finding ways to connect these Philippine teammates, even putting in budget for them to get a monthly lunch together, or if they live in different parts of the Philippines, a flight for a trip once a year for them to get together. Because again, just having that sense of connectivity and doing those karaoke parties together goes a long way, and it's more important than for a U.S. based employee. All right, third word in Tagalog is malasakit. This essentially means caring for something like it's your own, and it's why Philippines-based talent. I'm making a sweeping generalization, but why it tends to be incredibly strong for support type roles, just for that sense of ownership. But again, this is something that you need to screen for in doing recruitment and specifically being sure to incentivize it whenever you see someone having that level of care and ownership of it as if it's their own customer. All right, and then final word in Tagalog for you all is pet malu. It basically means awesome. But that's a great way to win some bonus points. Telling your teammates they're pet malu teammates. You'll give them a good laugh. How do I drive operational excellence in LatAm based teams? All right. Well, besides showering them with empanadas, which always goes well, um, I'll frame this from my experience, and I do want to preface this by saying that I'm just a white guy that's going to be making sweeping generalizations here, but these are just data points that I've collected from my 200 employees at NeoWork. So first and foremost, it's important to know that a lot of people like to group all of LATAM together, but each country has its own unique nuances. And I'll frame my response around Colombia-based teammates. So one, starting point is around the term ahorita, and this basically means soonish. And we've made it a goal at NeoWork that we don't use this word. And, whenever there's a task that's documented in our ClickUp or in any similar CRM you might use, and giving a fixed timeline and even date and time of entry, just to remove any ambiguity there. And look, you know, the island time term, it's actually a reason why I love living in Colombia because it forces me to slow down. When my manic entrepreneurial mind wants to go, 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 I'm kind of forced to pause at times, which I really appreciate. But also when working with, very fast-paced US startups, we really have made this a core value of ours at NeoWork of act with strategic speed, and I would encourage you also to incentivize and make this a core culture of aligning with the U.S. based pace, just to remove frustrations and be more on the offensive instead of having to deal with issues around time when they get directed back towards you. Um, Another best practice I found of just really being able to bring cultures together successfully is matching the level of directness with communication. So if you are sending a Slack message to a Colombian-based teammate, for example, and you start out first with, "Hey, how's this project going?" If really just putting the extra 10 seconds of the "Buenos dias, cómo estás?" or like, "Hey, good morning, how are you?" before diving into it, that goes a long way. And I promise that those 10 seconds spent on that will help save 10 minutes down the road from just misunderstandings that can happen at times when there's a very direct tone, which Colombian based teammates may be less familiar with. As someone building a global company, how do you navigate cultural differences when leading teams across multiple countries? And what unexpected lessons have you learned about cross cultural leadership? This is a great question. So I found early on with NeoWork, when we were growing the Colombia-based team, our Philippines teammates started to be worried, like, "Oh, do I need to start learning Spanish, or are they going to replace us?" Really drawing from a sense of fear. And really kind of the aha moment was bringing the two teams together and showing how really similar in many respects the cultures are. And the Philippines are kind of the distant cousins of LatAm, just by nature of the fact that they were a colony of Spain for 400 years, and a lot of the food is the same, lechon, chicharron. A lot of the words are the same in Tagalog as Spanish, vaso, mesa, and just bringing them together. And especially when we brought our leaders from Colombia to the Philippines and vice versa, they were able to see so much more alignment between their cultures. So biggest tip is just finding those areas of alignment and celebrating that. Building a startup can feel incredibly lonely. What practices have you developed to combat isolation while maintaining the confidence your team needs to see in their leader? For me, I've really been intentional on just over indexing on spending time with other founders. There are so many problems that I go through with my business that at first I think, oh, this is so unique to my business model and to this certain situation I'm facing. But it's really, at the end of the day, it's not. And I've found so many times that many other founders, especially ones that are one or two steps ahead of me in their journey, they've gone through very similar uh, issues and problems, even while working in completely different industries. And just the kind of expensive lessons that they've learned, and that them sharing that with me has really helped and to make me not feel lonely. And I'd also say just being very open with my team about kind of, being real with them at times of where I'm struggling with, where I need their support. That's really helped with getting their buy-in on supporting me as a solo founder. Having worked with both technical and non-technical teams, what's your perspective on building trust and alignment across different functional areas of a startup? Uh, I'll keep this one short to one actionable piece of advice, which is being really insistent on removing unnecessary acronyms and unnecessary internal lingo. Um, it really has just helped with aligning both technical and non-technical teams on kind of what is our shared mission. And it also helps on with newer teammates sounding credible when they don't have to go through the onboarding experience of not only learning this new role and who to reach out to for what at the company, but also having to learn a whole vocabulary list of acronyms and kind of internal company lingo. So we really made speaking plainly and clearly without the use of acronyms or abbreviations a core component of our fully remote team. Many founders struggle with balancing speed and sustainability. How do you approach growth in a way that doesn't lead to burnout for you or your team? This is a great question. And it's something that I've struggled with over time. And the thing that I always go back to is, you know, balancing speed, but in a way that's going to drive creativity and not speed, just driving it from a sense of fear. So I like to think of this a little bit from a neuroscience perspective of when energy is and blood flows through the amygdala, our fear center of our brain, that can be helpful in the short run of taking quick action, but it certainly leads to burnouts, and it's not sustainable at all. To be kind of having that fight or flight, running from a tiger, energy kicked on multiple times throughout every single day. So instead, really, I found a sense of flow and being able to prevent burnouts by being intentional about blocking out time when there's a rapid succession of kind of stressors that come, and being able to work from a place that leverages my frontal cortex instead of my amygdala, and really having that creativity and innovation come out for not just myself, but also my team. Thank you again for sending over all of these amazing questions. I really appreciate all of the listeners and subscribers to our newsletter. And please keep the questions coming.